All right, well, welcome to the panel. We have
I'm just seeing where everybody's
waving to
sitting.
the back, the really far people in the back.
Everybody in the back, if you want to move up. There's a couple empty spots, so fill it in.
Yeah, the giant screen isn't working today, so you might want to get closer.
The Jumbotron.
The Jumbotron, yeah.
Careful of the line, no
Come on
trampoline.
in.
No trampoline. Don't rush the stage when we're done.
No clipping, no clipping.
Did you say careful of the lion?
The line.
Oh, what about the lion?
This is-
So
Everyone knows about that now.
what is this
we
panel's
ruined this
official title? What
Okay,
were
so
we
we've got-
supposed to talk about?
Creator-owned IPs, I'm sorry.
No, you're right. Creator-owned, pursuing your passion. That's the official title.
Okay.
Ted came up with it.
Any questions?
Any
No,
questions?
came up with it together.
Well, I think
we
everything
like,
speaks
go back
for
and forth.
itself.
It's like, what should
Yeah.
we talk about?
We get to the game.
So, yeah, it's cool.
All right, so
introduce ourselves.
you guys, I think everybody here clearly knows what you guys do. In case you don't know what we do, we make toys. This is George, I'm Aileen. We own our own toy company, October Toys, and we also do shows and podcasts online, again, all about toys. And we have 2 new ones debuting. We do 3 a week right now, and we have 2 debuting next month, one about Lego and one about games. So please feel free to check out our channel, toybreak.com. But the reason we're here today is to talk about creator-owned IPs.
Yeah,
very
I'm
interesting
Ted
and
Someone else
Terranova.
to introduce
Oh,
these
sorry.
guys
I'm
too.
sorry. I thought everybody just knew you. You're Ted.
Yeah, Ted Terranova.
This is a TED Talk.
Did the Rivet Wars board game and
I'm Eric Lang, I make stuff.
What
board
kind of
games
stuff?
and stuff.
Well, I'm a game designer and I guess also part-time IP creator. I did Chaos Ball for Cool Mini or Not and Arcadia Quest for Cool Mini or Not and a bunch of other games.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
I know I have questions for you guys, but should we start with?
Yeah, you could do
That's
that.
fine.
I guess I'm trying to think how to phrase it. What was when you're getting into design? I don't really know. You said you're a game designer. Do you design the look of the miniatures as well, or do you do are you coming up with the gameplay? Are you what is your role in this?
Oh yeah, so I have no talent for art. I mean, to me, this is cool. That's my critique.
Okay, that's what I would say too.
But I'm a game designer. I design the rules, the rules, the systems, how the game plays.
Okay.
And in some cases, like in Chaos Ball, I actually I designed most of the IP as well. So the background world.
Is this something that was it did you have schooling for this? Or you have a background in that? How did you get into that field? How did you come into that?
School of Hard Knocks.
Okay.
So my specialties in school were psychology and math and economics, which are all very relevant, and languages, languages,
You're
French.
naming all the subjects.
Hmm?
You're naming every subject.
Yeah, reading, writing, arithmetic, you know.
STEM, kids. It's all about STEM. But I didn't go to any game design courses or anything like that because they didn't have those back in the day.
Okay.
Now I'm going to be telling you what Christmas was like in the 40s. But I didn't do any formal training for game design because literally when I was starting, we were sort of writing the book on how to do board games. And honestly, I still think we're learning. And for IP stuff, I did a little bit of writing training, I went to Vancouver Film School. My brothers, I did huge amounts of research on film and screenwriting, because in my other life, I sort of fancy myself a writer. I'm not. So I know exactly enough to be dangerous.
Nice. And then what about you, Ted?
Yeah, I didn't go to school for game design or for art. I went to school for architecture.
Oh,
So I got my degree in architecture because in school I was good at drawing but I also did good in school. So it's like
I did good in school.
the
You're
blending
awesome.
of the was the blending of the arts and the sciences. So it's like do architecture and so I think when I talking about the world design we had that other talk and just designing games or kind of solving problems. I kind of hit it from the training I got is with architecture. You start with kind of a plan or what your idea is, and then kind of look for reference of what you're going to do, and then you kind of try to work out different things and iterate through different processes till you end up with the design. So that is definitely I don't do architecture anymore, but I think my education there like really influences the way I do stuff, and that's what just going through that sort of formal training of like how to break down a problem into its pieces and how to deal with it, I think was just a great experience. And so but that got me into computers, doing CAD, 3D,
Okay.
and that got me into video games. So for over 15 years I've been an artist, art lead, art director in video games and doing 3D models and stuff. And I got into Rivet Wars and board gaming through 3D printing some of my models. And then, which you guys inspired actually through Toy Break, because these guys have they have a podcast and forums, and they talk a lot about creator-owned things, new products that are coming out, customized toys and things like that. And I started listening to their show and watching it, and they have this, I'll just keep talking about
Sure,
this.
yeah,
Yeah,
go for it.
They have this LMFG series, or they just started it. It was the first one. And so
Yeah.
they did a call out to artists, and they said, anybody do a sketch, and we'll kind of take all these sketches, and everybody will vote on them, and the ones that are most like popular and seem the coolest, we'll actually make into 5 little dudes and make the toys. And so I entered, I did a bunch of sketches, but one was a Rivet Wars tank, or what kind of became Rivet Wars. And it didn't get picked, but a lot of people were like, oh, that's still cool, you should do it. And so I did a 3D print, and then because of George and Eileen, they had a lot of information about casting and making your own toys and stuff. And so I started making silicone molds, pouring my own resin in the basement, making stuff, selling it online, and getting a lot of encouragement from the community and the forums. And so from there, it just became the miniatures, and then the game came out of that and stuff. So this was kind of an interesting path to get here, but no formal training in game design or,
Right.
even this kind of art and stuff. A lot of it was like on the job training, figure it out as you go. But I think that's a big part of, passion is a word that's in the title of this.
Yeah, I mean, it
of
sounds
this
like
panel.
both of you guys got
Yeah.
here through, you went a different path, but then your passion kind of led you into this whole gaming and
Yeah,
toy development world.
yeah, absolutely.
It's cool.
How about you guys? Do you have formal training in that? Maybe you can talk about your backgrounds and how you got into,
Yes, George.
making your own toys.
Let's talk about your background.
I went to school for special
Don't be
effects.
shy.
So it was in Pittsburgh, in a school in Pittsburgh, and of course, after that, if you're in effects, you want to move to Los Angeles, because that's
You
where
went to the
effects
art
is.
institute in
I did,
Pittsburgh.
yeah.
I have a lot of friends who went there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Do they all talk
I went to school in
negatively about
Pittsburgh,
it?
actually. Yeah.
I went there and I do.
Yeah, exactly. So, of course, you moved to LA, and then upon moving to LA, I found, I was working in effects a little bit, but then I found the world of toys through just sending my resume. I had sent it out everywhere. And when I got a bite from a toy company, I kind of changed my route from effects to toys, because I've collected toys my whole life, so it's always been something that I was, it was always been something I was into, and I never really thought about it being a job that you could do. And then when I found out that you can do it here in the United States, I always just thought toys happened in China somewhere and they came here.
That was like me with video games. I'm like, wow, I got a job making these things.
Yeah, like you never even realize it's something you can do. So then once I found out that you can do it here, I've just, I followed that. And
Where did you get that job, first job?
my first toy job was at McFarlane Toys.
Oh, cool.
And they were back in New Jersey. So I'd moved all the way from New York, all the way to LA, and then got a job back in New Jersey. So it
Good decisions.
it was a weird experience that whole time, but it was a great first job, great learning.
What pieces did you work on for McFarlane?
A lot of I started out with a lot of accessories, like
That's
sculpting
gotta be
small
McFarlane
parts,
influence.
fixing little things, or doing accessories like guns and knives and things like that. And then a lot of molding and casting. And I worked under Jim Preziosi and Cornboy, as he's known in the industry.
We're now the Four Horsemen.
Who are now, those
yeah.
are two of the Four Horsemen, and so I was kind of trained under those guys.
Oh,
And once they left and became the Four Horsemen, I went back to California and stayed out there doing toys and stuff. So.
What did you do when you went back to California?
Really? This is going to be like
Yeah.
my whole history of
Spanish
everything.
If I can get
we
them
told
started.
everybody.
I started out just doing freelance for different companies, like was that one? Is it Plateworks or something like that? It was a company that's no longer around. They did do you remember when Saturday Night Live had some action figures? It was like the Opera Man and things like that. It was a
Yeah,
company that was
yeah.
working on those, and I was just doing some, again, molding castings, accessories. I started out just doing molding casting, and I actually recommend that to everybody. start, even if you're gonna be a sculptor and you wanna know all that stuff, start out by learning how to mold and cast, because it'll help your sculpting later when you know how to, because if you sculpt something and you have no idea how it's gonna be able to be reproduced, it's useless, because you only have one. So you have to know how to be able to take that and make multiples of them, because you're always gonna need a master of what you're doing. So my whole beginning was a lot of molding and casting, and then I slowly got into more sculpting and then project management and learning it all from there.
Where did you work after that?
Oh, geez, here we go.
What kind of lines did you work on?
I mean, I don't even know. Like I've done doll stuff. I've done wrestlers and all sorts of different. I was like Lord of the
Did you do
Rings
the
action
Macho Man?
figures. I'm trying to think. I think one of the bodies I worked on ended up being a Macho Man, because I did a lot
That's
of body
awesome.
sculpts for that stuff.
That's cool.
There was a couple, like I was working at a company they were the company that was hired by, Jax made all the wrestlers back then.
Yeah.
And they, like, this company was contracted by Jax to do all the sculpting. So I did like all the bodies at one point, and it was like every figure that was coming out was a body I sculpted, and then another guy did all the heads. So it was like, a team effort like that. So it was fun. And then everything from, statues to mini busts to accessories to.
The Plan B, the Jim Henson toys.
Yeah, the Plan B guys, I had met early on in my toy working, when they were all at Resource. They were a company called Resource. And a couple of those guys left and formed Plan B, and then since we were friends with them, they got myself and a couple of our other friends to do some of the busts for them. So that was where I did that Gartham
As a
bust.
sculptor, those were the toys I saw that it was like, I'm gonna get into toy design.
That's cool, yeah.
That line is really, really cool.
Yeah, the Plan B guys had an amazing design for that, and they have a lot of war action figures too. Like I don't know if you guys are into that, because I know a lot of guys here are into the war theme. The Plan B stuff has a lot of cool like war guys in it too.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Can we talk about a project after this panel is done?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was my question.
Good question. And then October Toys.
And then we formed, Aileen and I formed October Toys, because we were working on we were doing a lot of like mass market toys and a lot of things that were like, just stuff you find at Toys R Us and Target and things like that. And
Not creator-owned properties.
And we were more into, like, a lot of our friends were artists, and we were into the whole like artist scene where like you're kind of developing your own thing. So we wanted to get into some of that, so we kind of formed our own company where we could work with artists and, either help them get their stuff made, or we can, make our own stuff as well. So it kind of all came out of like wanting to pursue like, let's get our own things out there too, like not just working for somebody else. How about you, Aileen?
Well, I come from a tech background. I grew up collecting toys and gaming, and like family game nights at my house were D&D. My dad DMing, my mom losing her way on the map. She can't use graph paper. Anyway, hi Mom. So I ended up going through college in communications and public relations and sociology and all these wonderful social sciences, which actually help a lot when you start forming your own business and needing to communicate with people, and you have a bunch of artists that won't go up and talk to anybody.
We're terrible at communicating.
And promoting yourselves.
And promoting
Yeah,
yourselves. So all of that culminated into me working in tech and web development and search engine optimization, and all of that led into me being more of the business end of October Toys, and being able to, because you can't just start a company with an artist.
Yeah.
I mean, you can, but one person can't do everything, Ted.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. You definitely
You don't
have
have
to work
time in
with
the
people.
day.
Yeah.
Well, plus we can create all the things
You
we
can't do
want,
it
but if we
too.
don't have a website, there's nowhere to do it. So like she runs the website, like all the stuff where I'm just like, I don't know how to do it. Like I'd have a MySpace page still or something if it was up to me.
Friendster.
So like she does all that. Like you got to file paperwork to exhibit at a convention. You need to have a license for that and all that stuff. She does all the stuff that I'm just like, I don't know.
I think what's interesting is just hearing all the backgrounds and how they somehow informed like what we wanted to do on our own, sort of like they sort of like led into like our passions and what we want to do, like talking about math and economics. you know, and I know you have to do a lot of math for the games to, you know, to balance them out for the mechanics and stuff like that, and just how, you know, just doing the 3D stuff and architecture and the design kind of helped guide the stuff I ended up doing and put me on that kind of path. And the same with you guys, like
Yeah.
eventually wanting to do your stuff. Because I was talking to someone about luck, and you know, people be like, oh, you guys are so lucky, you have your own toy company, look, you have your own toy line, you're so lucky and stuff. And how you know, I've read like people say like luck is more like a lot of hard work and kind of having things ready so that when the opportunity arises, you're ready to act on that
That's a
opportunity.
really good way to put it.
That you have the background and the skills,
Yeah.
and you're ready to then act. Because if you're not ready to act when that opportunity comes by, it'll pass you by and you might never get it again.
Well, so in game design, there's a way we think of it. So there's an expression, right, that I don't remember who said it, but like luck is preparation meeting opportunity, right? Which is
Yeah.
a short version of that. So in game design, we think of life as a series of D20 rolls, and in non-nerd speak, right, it's the little 20-sided die, and everything you want to do, everything you want to accomplish, you're rolling a D20. There is luck, of course, there's luck to it, but the key point is just rolling it as often as possible and applying as many modifiers to it as you possibly can, right? That's because I'm a nerd, and that's how I look at it. But that's totally true, right? I mean, yes, you can get lucky. You can just do nothing and be lazy and get lucky, but you're more likely to get lucky if you are constantly making attempts, right? And just basically working your we're being filmed, working your off.
You can say ass, we're okay.
You can say.
Working your ass.
Arse, for the English, arse is
Arse.
Yeah.
Working your arse off.
That sounds good.
And because you have to do that, I mean, we've all done that.
Mhm.
There's a lot of sleep we've all missed to make these things happen, and anything else that
A
we've
lot of
created.
coffee we drink. Yeah.
Oh, so much coffee. Yeah, sorry, there's my coffee. A lot of coffee, but that's where the passion part comes in.
Mhm.
Because if you don't have the passion for what you're making or what you're doing, you're going to burn yourself out. You're not even going to want to do it anymore, and you're going to miss those opportunities. So make sure it's something that, whatever the thing is, game development, miniature development, toy development, whatever it is, you have to be so into it that you love it, and you're not expecting to make $1 million
Right.
and buy fancy cars. Because that may not happen. In fact, let's just assume it's not going to happen.
Yeah, most
Right.
likely you would do it anyway.
I
Like,
do, exactly. If it's something that you would be doing for free, you're probably on the right track.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
If this is a good place, I have
No
a
questions.
question about, but it's not really so much a question, is it? No, it'd be great to hear from each of you if possible, in your process, especially in early processes, a lot of us are at maybe, what the hard part was. In other words, what kind of main obstacle you hit, and then how you overcame what that hard part is.
Assuming aside from money, because money is always the hard part.
Well, not necessarily. I
Do you
mean,
mean
if you
process?
find a way to,
Okay.
making the product more smaller or less complex to save money, that would be
Okay.
interesting too. 'cause
Well, I think
obviously
you
money's-
mean from a project standpoint, not so much from a career standpoint, right?
Well, it could be either one. But if we're talking about trying to.
Like that
those of us who
breakthrough
don't have a
product.
creator,
Yeah.
Yeah, breakthrough.
thing that was like
creator
that-
IP.
that got me
Your story is
doing it.
very much that, yeah.
Right.
How does one go from not having IPs to having IPs?
Right.
Good question.
If you have a
Go.
chance.
Who wants to go first? Make lots and lots and lots of IPs. Right, I mean, that's.
Rolling the dice.
It's a simplification, but I don't know of
Yeah.
any more eloquent way to put it, right? Like, if you're making music, right, if you're a musician, play your instrument. If you're making games, make games, play games. You're making toys, make toys. That everything else is kind of ancillary, right? Just do that thing over and over and over and over and over again. Malcolm Gladwell is one of my favorite writers, and he writes a lot of really great books, Tipping Point, Blink, that kind of stuff. He summarized it really, really well, that expertise is, it's passion training plus 10,000 hours. Which is a crazy specific number, but it's pretty much true. Just
Sounds about right.
do it over and over and over and over and over again. Do it until, at some point, like, of course you have to concentrate on the externalities, you have to concentrate on, on the business side, concentrate on networking and all that type of stuff, but if you're a creator at heart, you just create all the time. And hook up with cool people. I wish I'd met somebody like you in the early part of my career, but hook up with cool people that have skills that you don't, right? Who have technology skills, who have networking skills, who can take care of all the stuff that you shouldn't be taking care of.
Yeah.
And then just concentrate on your craft, because eventually, like if you're good enough and dedicated enough, I generally believe that good things will happen, right? But you just have to keep working.
As long as you put your things out there.
You have to put your things
You
out there.
can't
right?
keep them on your
E-
desk and expect
even-
somebody to
And
see
part of
them.
that might be, yeah, right, interfacing with other people. Actually, Ted, we talked about that a little while before.
Yeah.
You made that point, right, which is a really good point. You can't, no man is an island, right? That you have to you gotta make your stuff, but you have to submit feedback is actually a really good one, right? So, you can make awesome things. This is really awesome. I love this thing. That's my favorite. But you have to find out whether you're able to do this professionally or not. You have to take your works, your master works, and show them to other people, and be prepared for the inevitable feedback you're going to get. Everybody's going to have an opinion on it. A lot of them won't be positive, but you have to be able to weather that, right? And take it as constructive, right? I mean, how many people, when you were doing Rivet Wars, how many people that you played with had an opinion on your
Everyone,
on how your
every
game
single
was not perfect? This is not how I would make it.
Right.
You're going to get that, and if your reaction is of course at first is going to be, you know, like how dare you question my genius, but after a while you'll either have that beaten out of you, or you won't be doing this anymore, right? Feedback's critical. It's absolutely critical, and it makes you better at what you do, right? As painful as it is, it makes you better at what you do.
And get
Like,
feedback
Ted,
from the
you're
right
terrible
people
at
too.
Rivet Wars.
But get feedback from the right people, like not your mom. Yeah.
Yes,
Oh,
no,
yeah.
You know,
That's true.
like seriously, like find people who, you know, that's like what Eric was saying about finding people who have skills maybe you don't, but also people who you can look to, you know, as peers, and can give you feedback and tell you the truth and be honest, and you respect their opinion, and you know they're trying to make your thing better
Right.
with their feedback, that it is constructive. Because, you know, I've seen people surround themselves with like really negative people, and that can just like bring you down, and you're not going to succeed. Or people who are too positive, and they're just going to tell you, yeah, you're the best, you're doing great,
And then you don't get any better.
but you won't get any better.
Right.
Exactly. So I think surrounding yourself with those people, finding those people, that group of people, or even just that one friend who can really give you the feedback, and you can feed off each other. I think the putting it out there, but also doing it as much as you can is one of the most important things.
Sorry,
When-
I just had one little thing, just
Yeah,
a,
yeah, yeah.
a practical trick.
Yes.
So on the feedback part is, one of the tricks I use when, in game design you work a lot in prototypes. You guys do too, right? So prototype is a game is the game as is before it's published. Toys, prototypes are obvious. But one of the tricks I use is when I'm looking for feedback is that I find people in the local store or an area, and I make sure that they don't know it's mine. So I'll bring in a game and I'll be like, hey, a friend of mine made a game. I'm looking for some people to find out if it's any good. I want to give them some feedback. It's the best. It doesn't matter, even if it's friends, strangers, no matter who it is, if they know that it's your ego on the line, they're going to be softer. That's just human nature. They're not going to be as unfiltered as possible. But as soon as you take that connection out of it, you make it more impersonal, right? They will give you their absolute unadulterated feedback. They won't be invested in either liking it if they like you, or hating it if they hate you. You'll get as neutral an opinion as possible. I found that to be absolutely invaluable.
That's a great point.
Yeah, so getting back to just the numbers thing and putting it out there is so important, because part of what inspired me was reading this this blog this guy was doing about making his own comic book, and how he was in the effects industry, you know, like 3D special effects and stuff, and so he wanted to do an animation because he was an animator. So he wanted to make his own animated movie, and he was working on it for like 10 years, and you know, writing the script and rewriting it and reworking it and stuff. And one of his coworkers just said, man, why don't you just make a comic book and put it out there? Like, just get something out there. You've been working on this for 10 years. And a light bulb went off in his head. Like, yeah, you're right. You've got to get it out there. And I run into so many people who are like writing their novel, or working on their game or their design, or building this world. You know, we were talking about world building. and they've been doing it for 10 years or 20 years, or they have so much written, and it's like, you've got to get it out there. You've got to roll that die, and then roll the next die, and roll the next die, because that'll make you better. It'll open you up to criticism, and you'll learn from that. And then next time you roll that die, you'll have a better modifier.
And it's
if you-
scary though, right? Like it's, especially if you've been working on something for 10 years, that's your life, right? That's you've put everything into it. Even games that I work on for a couple of weeks, if I'm really, I pour myself into everything I do, but like, even now, I've been doing this for 15 years, it's still scary to show somebody something, right?
But it's too long to go without like.
Oh, 10
weird
years.
Getting
ten-
feedback.
It's like not, it's like driving
yeah.
somewhere and like not checking the map for like, you
Yeah.
know, you gotta check the map, you gotta recalibrate
Yeah.
your whatever you're working on. Every once in a while, you gotta reset things. And I think a big fear is too, like, oh, if I put it out there, will someone steal my idea? Are they gonna like take this great idea? And one of the hardest things to learn is when you put your idea out there and no one cares about it. Like, they're just like, oh, that's just like this or like that, or oh, you just took that and did this. And it's like, oh wow, no one's gonna steal your idea. Like, you know, what you want is people to actually be interested enough where they care about it and stuff. And so I think that overcoming that fear of criticism, talking about our backgrounds, the architectural education is you do your design, you hang it up, and then all these professors, like 5 or 6, sit, and all of your peers
Tear
are
it
behind
apart.
them, and it's like,
Oh,
so
critiques that.
what were you thinking? And it's like, well, I wanted to show the, you know, the tension between the different, you know, and they'll just rip into you, and even your peers will ask you things, and you'll try to defend it, and it's a very, you know, kind of, it's a rough
Brutal.
process.
That's
It's
a
a
pressure
brutal
It's
process.
humbling, yeah.
And so you get, so I think luckily I got a thick skin, and I was very used to criticism, and I think that's something important, that every time you roll that die, it'll make you more used to criticism, and also better at reacting to criticism, and
Right.
being able to filter out, okay, this is good criticism, but not stuff I'm interested in. But this is a really good nugget that I'm going to use, and I'm going to take that, and learning to accept criticism, but also how to then use it so that you can make your thing better is an important skill to learn. And if you just keep sitting on your project, you won't get any better at that. Just like drawing or anything, you've got to work at it.
I guess playing off something you said, and going back to what's one of the hardest things is knowing when something's finished and being
Yeah.
able to put it out there, because you have to realize that even at whatever point you're on, you're never gonna think that what you're doing is finished enough to put it out. You're gonna be like, oh, I could still do this or that. At some point, you do have to just say, okay, it's done to this point, I'm gonna put it out there, and just know that you can always advance it. I mean, there's constantly, even with games, there's always a new edition to kind of fix the things that were maybe wrong in the first edition, or, you know, it add on to it in some way. So you can always advance your piece, you can always make it better, but at least put it out there, like you're saying, and get that process started.
Or you'll
Because,
tweak it forever.
or you'll sit there for
Yeah.
10 years working on your story and no one will ever know, and then you'll do it for the rest of your life, because you'll never, like, there's something ingrained in you that's like, it's not good enough yet, it's not there, it's not ready. It's just natural, like, it's just in your nature, it's in everyone's nature, I think, to be like, no, it's not done yet, it's not good enough. But at some point, just say, okay, it's good enough, it's ready. And then someone will give you critique and go, oh yeah, okay, I can change that. And you take it back and make it better, and then put it out there again. And I think that's kind of what you were saying. It's a good point to get over the part of yourself that makes you want to hold on to it. I
And your
still
first
struggle with it
one-
on all my projects.
Your first one probably isn't good enough, and it probably isn't ready.
It won't be, yeah,
Because you
but
just
that's the
don't
good
know.
part, like
Right.
because you'll never know how to make it to the point where it is ready if you don't show people and get their reaction to it.
Yeah.
I think also finding, along with those things and kind of built into it, trying to figure out, this one's sort of a weird magical combination that happens at some point, and it's very ambiguous to talk about, but you'll feel it when it happens, is finding your voice or finding your style of whatever you're doing. Because I'm sure everybody in this room, you know, we're all into so many things, you know, so many movies and pop culture things and toys and games, and like, I want to make that, and I want to make that, and I want to make that, and like then you end up with this mishmash of things that you've created. But like we were talking earlier, once sometimes you make something and then you're like, I'm kind of feeling this one. Let's go along this line for a little while. oh, let's start developing this property. Oh, I put it out there and people are like, well, let me make some more Rivet Wars. Let me see how this world's developing. And then you're like, okay, let's focus on that. This is going well. You know, don't abandon it as soon as you're like, oh, that went well. Now I'm gonna make.
Yeah, that was our topic.
Yeah.
Exactly. So trying to focus, I think it's also hard.
Yeah.
Because you want to make everything.
Because there's so much TV out there to watch.
That was like your advice you gave me.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. You guys are all familiar with Sturgeon's law, that 90% of everything ever made is garbage. Right? It's actually probably closer to 95%, but that's harsh, right? When you think about it, right? You think about, there's two ways to think about that, and I believe it's absolutely true. But there's two ways to think about it. 95% of everything is garbage. It's true, but when you think of everything that's ever been made, 5% of everything that's ever been made is huge, right? That's more than you can consume in your lifetime. So the way I like to think of it is accept that 95% of what you are going to think of is garbage. It's crap. But 5% what you think of is going to be awesome. Just think of a lot of stuff.
Just get it out.
Get
You know,
it
sometimes
out.
you have to write it down or draw it or
Write it
get
down,
it out.
draw it, get it out. If you have a thought in your head and you're like, oh, this is brilliant, chances are it's not. But write it down, write it down, and like, just for the exercise of forcing yourself to get it out of your head, because when it's in your head, it's still a little bit nebulous, and your brain has an interesting way of tricking yourself into filling in detail that you don't even know about, but it's perfect. Doesn't matter. Like it's the hand waving trick, right? like I got this really great movie. It's like Star Wars, but with squirrels, right? And
I would watch that.
well,
Squirrel Wars.
That's the project he wants to talk to you about.
Ah, yes.
all right.
Squirrels.
See, I just gave away a free idea. Don't steal it. But but even if you don't, if you just sit back and think about it, keep it in your head for a while. Like, so there's a part of your brain. This is a psychological truism that will fill in the detail, but won't really tell you about it. You won't know it consciously, and just except that you know that it's brilliant, right? And my movie's brilliant, and I can see every scene, except you can't really until you're forced to write it down in a manner that's will articulate to somebody else, right? For you guys, I envy you guys. I must say, on some level, that what you guys do is provable, really quickly, right? If you have a cool idea for a toy, instant proof, right? For writing and for game design, it's not as immediately apparent, right? There is a barrier between that, which makes this easier to defend because it's more complex, but it also makes it easier to prove. Makes it more difficult to prove when it's good.
I will say too, it's an awesome time to be creating your own stuff.
Yep.
And looking for feedback, partly because of technology. Like, with forums, like you guys have the October Toys forums and stuff like that. And when I was starting to do the Rivet War stuff, I just created a thread, and I'm like, start out like, I don't know what I'm doing, why am I doing this, but I just am interested in this, and I'm just gonna start showing stuff. And I think, then seeing people react to it, you can get a lot more feedback from a much more diverse group, and you're also kind of forcing your stuff out there. Like, all right, am I gonna post this? Like, am I gonna post this picture? Because then anybody can see it, as opposed to like, even just if, 10 or 20 years ago, you do a cool sketch. It's like, what do? You send it to a magazine, or you show it to your mom, or you bring it to your friends, like, hey guys, what do you, that was great, but now you can, there are forums for, so many specialized forums, whether you're sculpting or
Game
drawing
design.
or painting or, game design, just talking about anything. You can really put it out there. And I think that once you put it out there, kind of, it almost forces you to keep putting it out there. Like, hey, I'm going to keep supporting this because, people will be like, hey, I want to see more. Where's more of that stuff, and getting more people interested in it and getting that feedback. And I think that, for me, that helped drive me forward. Like, people saying like, oh, what's the next thing? What's coming? And I'm like, oh, I just want to watch TV tonight. But like, they want me to design something else. So I'm going to do a sketch, like, and giving yourself like, okay, this week I'm going to post something about a new character, a new sketch, or a new design, and that, create a Facebook page for my thing, for my idea, and, go with it, put it out there, roll that die, and then if it's not great and you want to do something else, then make the conscious decision, I'm gonna move on. But, it's free and so accessible today that it's never been like this before, It's pretty awesome time to.
Yeah.
Just a
be
cool
trying.
You
decision.
mentioned I'm sorry, you mentioned start a Facebook page. There are so many avenues that you hear about, Twitter and YouTube, and that's something that seems overwhelming. Like, there are so many, how do you keep up with the important ones? Like, how do you know which one?
It's
I'll bet
hard.
that's all you.
All
It's
of them.
hard.
You
All
gotta
of them.
kind of do all of them, and you
Huh.
gotta you have to, and it's hard. You gotta keep on top. I mean, she does all that stuff, so you gotta keep on top of every one of those sites. You gotta use all of them, because each one of them, like you said earlier, you've seen our show on YouTube, but you didn't, we also have it on, Lit TV, we have it hosted on our own site. Those are, Roku has it, those are all places that you didn't even know it existed. So if we didn't put it on YouTube, you never even would have seen it. So you have to kind of be on all of them, because you're gonna find a different audience on all of them. And then hopefully you can gather all that audience together to like what you're creating. You might get only a couple people over here, but those couple people plus those couple people plus those couple people, and then you scoop them all together.
Big group.
I can give you some clarity actually on that. To think about it from, if you think about it as a game designer, there actually are mechanics to this, right? So it's what it is. It's aggregation and connection. So what you create a piece of content. You create one piece of content, right? You have your a YouTube show, a podcast. That's the only thing you have to worry about creating. From that point, what you're trying to do is you're trying to aggregate as many people out there in internet land to your product. So you don't have to worry about so much about like how do I massage this to connect to these, massage this to connect to this. You just create one thing, concentrate on that. That's fine. But how to connect everything is actually not. Generally, I find it's just a Google search away, right? Google social media, right? Look at the top 5 hits. Those are the top 5 things I should connect to, and then all you have got to do.
And start
If-
where you're already at.
Where you're already at, right? If you're the only person doing everything, I would say minimum bar to start. But honestly, the best advice is find something like Alien and go like, hey, I've got this cool thing. Can you connect me to the world?
Yes. The
But-
answer is yes.
And that gets into
But-
the whole partnering with people who do things well. You run into that problem of how much time are you spending on your sculpting versus your media or that kind of stuff. I think starting out with using forums and things like that just to improve your work, is probably the critical thing to not lose sight of what it is that kind of got you to do
Joining
the
a
thing,
focus
what
community.
you're passionate about and stuff like that. Yeah, don't get lost in becoming a marketing person for your idea and then forgetting about the sculpture and stuff like that.
And it could be something as simple as once you're developing something, set aside 2 hours a week, just set a timer and okay, this hour on Monday and this hour on Thursday, I'm gonna go post something on Twitter, I'm gonna take a picture of my thing, and I'm gonna put it on a forum, and I'm gonna go find out what's this Vine thing all about, or whatever the things are out there. I'm gonna finally make that Instagram account. Just even a minimal amount of time will definitely help promote you, get yourself out there, and like Ted was saying, connect with different communities.
And there's also whatever one kind of works best for you as well. There are, there's right now, there's Twitter, there's Instagram, there's Vine, there's all those things. But for me, when I'm using those, I'm not a wordsmith, as you can tell from my stuff here. So the Twitter for me the Twitter account doesn't work as well for me as the Instagram account does. So because I can just snap a picture and it's there. So kind of find the whatever system works best for you and what you're comfortable with, and you'll be able to use that more and utilize it more.
And something like Instagram is amazing because it connects to your, you can connect that to your Facebook and your Twitter, and I think Flickr, it does other things. So that one picture, click a button, it goes to 4 or 5 different networks. Perfect, great. Moving on to the next thing that I'm doing.
Yeah. Figuring out a way to
Technology.
use the technology to make it as efficient as possible. My Instagram totally set up that way. So
Yeah.
I'll take a picture Rivet Wars game yesterday. Type a few words, some hashtags, and then throw it up on Instagram, and then it gets tweeted and put up on Facebook and stuff.
Blog.
And I let pictures do the talking for me. I don't
Yeah.
I don't write like, oh, I was thinking about. No, it's like, here's a picture, a sketch I did.
I wanna
Here's-
hear your journal
Here's
entries.
this. I'll like just record them, like
Oh,
no
I love
video,
that.
just audio.
Just call in 3-minute voicemails on my break. Ted,
Oh, those
Ted's
are
journal.
awesome. Those are so funny.
Like Dave.
It'll be, like you said, TED Talks.
Right.
It'll be our 3-minute segment every week, TED
TED Toy
Talks.
Talks.
It's 3 minutes for no reason.
Yeah.
3 minutes for no reason. That's,
Can we please make this happen?
3 minutes for no reason.
Did that answer your questions too?
Pretty good.
A little
thank
bit?
you.
At
And
all.
I mean, we can also talk about, because this is, we're talking about creator-owned IPs. Ted was saying it's an amazing time with technology and companies, independent companies are on the rise. I mean, that's why we're all here. That's why everybody is in this room right now. And it's an incredible time to connect with people, and we have things like Kickstarter to get our creator-owned IPs out there. So it's a really weird thing, because you used to take this idea and you're like, Mattel, will you make this for me?
Yeah.
Do you like that? And they're like, no, we won't make it. And then, a year later, you're like, that thing on the shelf, that looks a lot like my thing. Wait a minute, I'm not accusing anybody specific, just, that kind of thing could happen very easily. And now, everybody at this table owns the things that they're making, which is incredible. When has that ever happened in history, that you could mass produce something and you own it? You own Rivet Wars.
Yeah, and have the control over it.
Exactly.
And I think what's cool about that too is like, Eric and I were talking about some of the state of like decision making in video games and stuff, and people being, going with analytics, and we were talking about it before, like everything being licensed and risk aversion to trying new things, and who is most likely to not care about risk? It's like passionate people who are just doing stuff for fun. Like Eric said, if you're just gonna do it, not getting for just the fun of it, there's no risk. It's like, this is my hobby. Like, I would be drawing, like Rivet Wars came because I was just always doing art and different projects in my spare time, and doing this model or drawing this or entering this contest, and then I was like, wow, maybe I'll just like focus on this one thing and just start doing it. But there wasn't much risk to me. It's like, well, I end up with a bunch of cool drawings and some 3D models that no one cares about, and then I'll just do something else. So I think what's interesting is it's people who are passionate about something and keep pursuing it that are going to create the really interesting projects, and the projects that maybe do stuff that are different or in a different way, and that innovation, usually it comes that way. Innovation comes from those sort of startup companies, or those, someone just doing a project in college, or like some kind of thing where it's just a an experiment, just a sort of just trying stuff. So
There's even more cool upside to that too, because I've done consulting for a lot of big companies out there, Mattel, Hasbro, Amigo, that kind of stuff. That there are entire divisions of all of these big companies that are devoted entirely to scouting and acquiring new talent. Right? Their business model is, we don't take risks, but we're looking out for cool, creative, independent people to come up with this cool stuff, and we'll just buy it. Right, so like if you're into that, right, like there is an upside to it, right? One day they could, Hasbro could decide, like, oh, we've been watching Rivet Wars, we kind of like this.
No
Ted,
way.
We want your
Well,
stuff.
we're
I mean,
indie,
there's a number.
indie, right?
Really, there's not a number.
Well, so
There's always a number.
I'm going to tell you the
Oh, there's
conversation.
always an, I'm sure.
This is the conversation that will actually happen. They'll say like, Ted, I got a number here. No, this is the number that I think
like
you're going to sell to us for. Ted, like you'll never guess. You can't guess my number because there isn't one. They'll hand you it. You'll go, turns out that is my price.
Somehow they know your number. They
And
like
that's not
profile
necessarily a
you
bad
and
thing.
figure it out.
No, it's not.
Because that can fuel your next thing.
It can fuel your next thing, and you also, there's something to be said for having exposure. Like, usually when people do that kind of acquisition, they're not just gonna buy your thing, they're gonna buy you, right? And then you'll end up in the belly of the beast, whatever. Like, it's, I actually think of that as really good idea. Like, I did a bunch of work for Hasbro and a bunch of work for Wizards of the Coast, who are the big dogs in the gaming scene. Having your creative vision with those kind of resources opens your mind to a whole bunch of new possibilities too, right? All of a sudden you're like, what would you do if finances were not an issue, right? Then you're suddenly
The
free.
guidance counselor question.
Exactly right. What would you do if you had Bill Gates as a dad?
And there's
Right.
different scales of that too.
And so
Like,
usually probably nothing.
But there's different like scales or levels of that too. Like when I was doing Rivet Wars, I was making my own products, and then started talking to Cool Mini or Not, and talking about partnering, and that goes back to the whole idea of like you letting someone else do what they do well, like manufacturing and distribution and marketing, and having an expertise in an area, and then me being able to focus more on that kind of thing. I didn't sell out or totally, like
Whatever you
like,
gotta tell yourself.
There wasn't a giant. All right, it's sold out.
It's important though to.
It gets me through the day. Right?
It's important to distinguish though, you did have to make compromises, right?
Exactly. Like you do have to make. You have to give something to them, and they
Right.
give something to you. So.
Right, well, and you have to take their feedback into account, right?
Right.
Because now they're partners, so their feedback suddenly becomes more than just something you have to kind of consider.
Right.
Right, but that's not always a bad thing. Sorry, we've been
Is
ignoring.
there any way to argue your way out of having to have things made in China? I mean, self-manufacture, is there just like a borderline, say Rivet Wars or even the OMFGs? I mean,
The simple answer is don't worry about whether you make a profit. If you don't care about profit, if you don't care about your bottom line, then there's absolutely no reason you can't publish it with, like, the printer across the street.
Mhm.
But the only reason that people publish in China, Korea, et cetera, is the bottom line.
right.
Right, is what percentage of your final cost is in your manufacturing.
And you wanna make $1,000, you wanna make $10,000.
It's the only reason, right? It is literally the only reason. Otherwise, of course, I mean,
Or do you want to lose money?
Right.
Which is what I was doing on the Rivet Wars stuff. to
Right.
begin with, really.
When you were
Absolutely.
casting it yourself?
Yeah, I mean, like we were talking about this last night, and the amount of time, like I was selling the groups of like 2 packs of these little guys for $15, and just the amount of I didn't even think about my own time, like my hours I was putting in,
Yeah.
and just the just the shipping and the just I mean, I was pretty much selling this stuff to buy more resin so I could make more guys, so I could buy more resin and silicone to make more
Passion.
molds,
Right.
and then hoping that would save up money to passion to pay for the 3D prints, because they're kind of expensive, So and then I was doing watercolors and just like selling those, to people who wanted to buy them to buy more resin and stuff. So, but I was probably definitely losing money if a business person looked at my business model, they'd be like, this is a horrible business. Like you should go do something
It's
else.
like on Shark Tank. Do you guys, anybody else watch Shark
Yeah,
Tank and
yeah.
all this shit? People go on there and they're like, well, how much have you invested in your business? And they're like, oh, 150,000 of my own dollar. Like, yeah, maybe we haven't done 150,000, but you're gonna you're probably gonna lose some money when you start making whatever it is you're making.
of course.
You can never count for your time.
But
Never.
but that's the
Yeah, but
thing,
if you
right?
freelance
That's the
instead
passion.
of spending
Is
the time
this a hobby
with
that pays for itself, or do you want to do it as a business? And that's actually a very clear. You should make that demarcation as early on as possible, not just because money is not the only success metric out there, right? If you're passionate about it and you just want to do something cool, you want to entertain your friends, or you want to add something to the world that wasn't there before, if that's your victory condition, then don't worry about the financials, don't worry about any of that other stuff. Do what Ted did, right? Make enough money to be able to sustain your hobby and keep doing it and keep getting better at it. Don't take any of that business mumbo jumbo into account. You'll be happier. If your goal is that you want to make money from this, then you do have to think about the business end of it, and you have to compromise a lot more. There's no judgment, right? There should be no value judgment. Both are completely valid
Viable.
paths.
Yeah.
But the better you know what your motivations are, the more happy you'll end up being. Right, because there are mutually exclusive decisions you have to make all along that path, right? I realized very early on that I wanted to do this for a living, right? I mean, I love making games, I would do it for free, but I want to do it for a living. Partially because I don't know if there's anything else I can do, right? But I might be useless at everything else, but this is kind of what I do, right? That's my thing. And I realized, well, I have to do this as a living, and so I made that choice early on, which meant that I had to make a lot more compromises than a completely 100% independent creator has to do.
What's great though, I just want to interject about doing something as a living is it, you know, we were talking about that 10,000 hours to mastery. You get those 10,000 hours a lot quicker than if you did it, you know, for hobby.
Well, time is time.
You put more hours in. You put more
No,
hours in.
yeah. I'm saying you'll, like if you're working a job that has nothing to do with your passion, and then at night you're putting in like 2 hours, you know, working on your sculpture, and then, you know, how many a week? If you're sculpting all day, 8 hours a day or 12 hours a day, you're gonna get to 10,000 hours more quickly.
Right.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
should have said.
You're
sorry.
gonna eat ramen for a few
It
months.
made sense in my head before I said it.
I got it.
I'm just
But-
designing, developing your idea.
Right. You're wordsmithing me. So what worked out for me really well was the fact that I was doing the video game art. So I got really good at being a 3D modeler, sculpting in 3D, dealing with those kinds of issues and those skills and getting those better. And then when 3D printing came about, I could leverage all that expertise into like making these things. So that's something to consider too, that it might take you longer to get to that point where you're really good, or you're at that professional level. Because if you come out of school and you get that internship and work your way and get that job and you keep doing that thing all day, that's your life. You will get better at it, and you'll be. An important thing that people forget is you're also working around people like you worked with those guys who became the Four Horsemen. You
Right.
learned from them. They were saying to you, hey, I'll show you this trick or
They make
this
you
little
better,
tip,
right?
and you can gain an extra 100 hours of like blood,
Stop
sweat, and tears.
making up
through it.
math.
It's a time is wibbly wobbly, don't worry about it.
This is the hardest over here.
You're
I'm making analogies.
our
Have
poor
you had
audience
any-
here is being.
No one here is writing down my actual facts, figures I'm giving out. So.
Did that answer your question?
It's just a
Have you had any
100.
kicks in the gut as far as like sending off an original that was the quality that you want, and then it come back and it looks like it's been made upside down and backwards and
Oh, you mean like when you send it to China or
Yeah.
something? Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
that happens all the
Yeah.
time.
Ah.
That's part of the
That's-
project management of handling what you're doing. Like, that's the next step. You have to become a project manager for your own stuff. And you have to just, go ahead.
I was gonna say, we get this question all the time by email. People email us all the time. I have this thing I want to make. I'm like, great. Do you have $10,000? But and I mean, you could raise on Kickstarter. You could start smaller. You could do. There's a lot of ways to get around starting your own idea into 3D or 2D, half 3D, 2D, as games are. But I always tell people, by all means, go off, make something on your own. You could research it, learn it all on the internet. It's so beneficial to hook up with a company that you admire, that you trust, that makes things in your genre that you like, that can help you with that first project, help you with that first project management, help you get over those hurdles, because it's a learning curve just like anything else. You don't. Being at this convention, do you sit down and play the game, or do you go, hey, can you show me how to play that? That's so much easier. Like that's going to be how you achieve success.
So that brings up a question actually for me. So did you guys get approached by Cool Mini, or did you approach them, or did you just know people and then I guess with you guys, if somebody comes to you and says, hey, I'd really like to make this, what would it take for me to get you to make this, and I don't have $10,000, I've got the stuff though, and I'll let you make it and produce it, and then cut you in, and we'll split the profits, or however you work that out money-wise. I know there's two different questions.
Sure.
You guys can go first.
So we're probably, Ted and I might be anomalies, because I think we have the same story, right? Cool Mini approached us, right? So Ted's been, because we're a little different, this is not our first project, right? Ted's been doing this for a very, very long time. I've been a full-time game designer for like 15 years. So our story's not going to be very typical. So the Cool Mini had a relationship with a producer that I work with in Brazil who did some of these IPs. And they said like, hey, we need a game designer with experience in our stable. So they asked me to do this for them. And we have an interesting relationship with Cool Mini in the sense that I don't actually work with them directly on games. I actually, my producer and I in Brazil, we're turnkey. We do the entire, we acquire all the art, we get all the sculpts, we put the game together, we test it, we make the product, and Cool Mini, they do the final testing, final vetting, and distributing. With River Wars, it might have been, River Wars a little bit different, but they did approach him.
Yeah,
They were like, you're cool.
Yeah, they were like, we like your stuff, and Cool Mini or Not, sells different miniature lines from all kinds of different companies, and they were like, hey, we want to carry your miniatures and your figures and stuff. And I explained to him how limited my production runs were and how, it wasn't really something that was viable. And the director of Cool Mini or Not, David Doust, we just started talking about, he was really interested in the IP and liked the art and the sculpts and things like that. And I talked to him about that I was in the video game industry and had a lot of game experience, not with board games, but with working that stuff up. And we discussed developing a game and decided that's what we're going to do. And so I formed an LLC, Super Robot Punch, and that's the company that developed Rivet Wars. And so I gathered some of my friends through the video game industry. That's where having people you can trust. So I know game designers, not board game designers, but I knew game designers, and I knew sculptors and artists and graphic designers and stuff. And so contracted them to help me make the game because I couldn't do it all by myself. And then Cool Mini, I really like. David's a really creative guy and has a great vision, and we talked a lot about the bigger picture of the game design, and then they have great designers like Mike and the other people there who gave me a lot of feedback, and even they sort of wanted to see the game, like, hey, let's check it out, because I think at first they were just like, hey, let's make a game with cool looking minis, and if the game's okay, not too bad, but as it came along, they were really excited about the game and gave some great feedback, and really helped with the final product and stuff, and then they did the manufacturing and distribution and stuff like that.
Because I noticed, because like you got Super Robot Punch and Cool Mini, and then
Yeah.
yours is Cool Mini and I can't read.
Spavey Western.
Yeah. So like you were kind of mentioning, it's like kind of a stable of smaller companies that are aligned with them. So that answers the question. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I wish we had money to make everybody's project that came to us. We don't. I mean, this is it. This is October Toys. This is Toy Break. This is it. Unfortunately, we can't make a lot of other people's projects as we're focusing on some of our own, and we do a lot of project management for other projects. But stuff like this, like OMFG, we got to utilize the community and really work with so many different people, because each one of these is designed by someone different. Sometimes they're even sculpted by different people. So we do have, we try to incorporate as many people as possible in our projects. So that's one way to kind of get a foot in the door, I guess, if that,
And
does
then
that kind of answer the question?
The other thing is, if you come to us and you have an awesome idea and you wanna fund it yourself, we do project manage for other people. So we can help you after you have the funding part. If you have the idea and the funding, we can definitely work with you to take that to get it to the production part of it. We do that for people.
Or we could work with you if your thing is, if you want to make a 3D thing or something like that. We could work with you to make a prototype, and then if you want to take that prototype and maybe find an investor, or work with your own, make a Kickstarter for yourself, or there's a ton of different ways to just kind of.
Well, and that goes back to what you were saying earlier, and that's the nice thing about the way technology and the entire community is now. So I can say, hey, I've got this idea, here's some sketches, I want to make it a 3D prototype, and you guys knock that out, and then I turn around and go up to Kickstarter and say, hey, here's what the miniatures will look like.
Right.
Exactly.
And everybody's off.
Being as
to the
prepared
races.
as possible, like we were talking about. Really quick, I know we have to wrap up, and I want to. This is totally boring, but it's so terribly important. And I'm sure everybody in this room has ideas that they want to create and pitch to other people. I can't stress enough how important it is to read the contract, read the fine print. I don't want you to lose your rights to your ideas, or have to. Obviously, you're gonna. You need to make compromises when you work with people.
Well, yeah.
And I know it's boring. But just try to slog through the contract, or it may suck, but pay a couple $100 for a lawyer to check it out, because I want you to keep your stuff, keep your ideas, and keep making cool stuff with them.
I'd say get an attorney, really, just to
I completely agree,
know,
yeah.
because that's,
Even
an
just, a
attorney,
little
if they
bit,
were gonna make
couple
a
hours.
toy, wouldn't try sculpting their own toy. And there's just stuff that they know, especially an attorney who's familiar with IP or, intellectual property and that kind of stuff.
And I know it's
before you
boring and
sign
scary,
something,
but
have
it's-
someone and spend the money. It's worth spending the money
Yep.
just to know your stuff's safe. Because otherwise afterwards you'll be like, oh man, what happened? Like I shouldn't have done that, or I didn't realize I was doing that thing.
Well, the key thing is it's not so much to protect you from failure, right? It's to protect you from success.
Exactly.
Right. So the more successful a project gets, I use the music industry as an example, right? Because they're the most rife with interesting and salacious stories. But for most musicians in the industry who were famous in the '80s, probably every band we grew up on, don't own their stuff. Right, that was the part of their deal, and they didn't know that. They were 18-year-old kids. They were just ridiculously talented. The people, the difference between the people that are making really good livings now and still, and the people who are doing the other thing that we write documentaries about, those are the guys that own their own music. They own their own stuff. And it's funny. It's not a lot of time people you've heard of. Like I talked about stuff like Motley Crue. I know he's going too much in the music thing, but Motley Crue. Everybody's heard of Motley Crue, right? They didn't own the music rights to their first 2 albums, which are really, really, really popular. They're still working. They're still playing clubs every once in a while. Somebody, Yngwie Malmsteen, who's the Swedish shredder that very few people have heard of. He owned all his stuff. He's a millionaire, right? But just because he owns his stuff, he sells maybe 100,000 records a year, which is big now, but wasn't back in the day. But he owns it. He owns everything. When people come to license his stuff for movies, he owns it. It makes a big, big difference.
One more really quick question. Could you give like a 2-minute rundown of we've already established that it has to go through China, but the mini process from sculpt to shipping? What are the key steps on that?
Oh man, 2 minutes.
Well, I mean,
It's a whole other panel.
And next year we'll do.
Well, I can try since I'm not the expert, so I might not be
Yeah, let's
as
hear
I might not be as trapped by
Yeah,
detail
we
as you
can
guys.
jump stuff
Yeah.
into.
So step one is art, of course, right? Step one, you have ideally a 3D rendering of some kind.
At least
right?
turnarounds, yeah.
At least turnarounds, right? So turnaround is being like either art drawn from X number of angles or done up in 3D. Step two, that art goes to a sculptor. The sculptor is ideally somebody who knows casting, like we were talking about, who will create a master. They'll create a master that is, they'll usually do it in resin or metal or some completely impossible to reproduce material. This is what it's going to look like.
wax, maybe
Right.
wax.
Made of wax. Step three, and this is done for multiple pieces. Step three, create a mold, a plastic mold, which is a big block of stone
Silicone.
or silicone, right? That's completely impossible to destroy. That mold is.
Oh no, you can destroy it.
For all intents, see, that mold contains X number of pieces of plastic, which are usually joined together in some way. It's an injection mold, so that's how they mass
Yes,
produce
those
it.
ones are steel. The injections are steel.
There we go. And those, at the factory, they pour hot plastic into those and make a billion little things. Crack it open. There's your stuff.
With flashing. With flashing.
Exactly. And then, so step four, get it back from China. Either they separate it for you, put it into bags, or they send it to you, and you have to separate it. If you're producing more than 100, I would definitely recommend you do that. Step 5, blank. Step 6, profit. That's a good breakdown.
That's a very good breakdown, actually.
Thank you.
But we're around, all of us are around, obviously, the rest of the day, so if you guys have more
If you want way
questions.
more depth than that, all right.
Talk to Ted's nose. All right, well, thank you guys so much for coming out. We really enjoyed talking to you guys, and we'll see you around the rest of the day.